Hi folks, JP here from the podcast. Just to let you all know that the podcast is sponsored by AB Entertainment, and the AB stands for Mr. Alec Beveridge. It's a DJ and entertainment business. Alex is on Facebook and Instagram, and you can hit him up through the WhatsApp for any bookings on 07845 746 092. And also folks, the podcast has taken on a new partner, and we're partnered by MCM Framing Services and Hoops Memorabilia. If you want any jerseys, or if you've got any memorabilia sitting around you want framed or anything looked after that way, contact John Mullaney, and you can get him at johnmullaney0971@gmail.com, or contact him on his mobile 07835 072 582. And here at the Unrestricted View, we hope you're all enjoying the content, and if you are, please like and subscribe. It's free to do so, and also share amongst your Celtic family as well. Hail, hail from all of us. Yes, and welcome back along to the Celtic Unrestricted View. It's myself, JP, and joining me this fine day is my good man, Mr. Alan Stirling. And Alan, we are joined by a very special guest who's probably well known to a lot of the Celtic fans. And looking forward to hearing some of his stories today. That is indeed a Mr. Tommy Sheridan, Alan. It's good to get Tommy on, mate.
Fantastic. I'll be very interested to hear a few of Tommy's stories. We've heard a short few minutes of some of his stories before we come on there, and I'm very excited to hear a lot more. So, very exciting pod upcoming, and thanking Tommy for coming on and giving us his time. It's much appreciated.
Yes, Alan, and you mentioned excitement, mate. I'm excited about this myself, actually. I'll be looking forward to this. I just want to say welcome, Tommy. Thanks very much for gracing us with your presence and giving us the time to have a chat with you, mate.
No worries, brother. No worries. Part of the Celtic family. So what could be better on a fine Wednesday morning than sitting down and talking about the tick?
Absolutely. I love it, coming on, having a chat with you guys, because at least I can get a chat with Celtic. If I try and do that in the house, my missus goes ape with me. So she goes absolutely nuts. But like I say, is obviously today we've named the episode My Celtic Days for yourself, Tommy.
Sure.
So just basically, let's get right into it. Take us back to your earliest memory of being a Celtic fan and knowing what it was all about.
Do you know what, JP? It's quite apt that I was out this morning with my pal Paul for nursery school, and we were talking about this particular game anyway. So I have got earlier memories, but this particular memory is so vivid. I would be 8 years of age. It would be May of 1972. I don't know if you guys were even born. Back then.
I wasn't far away. I was 84 late enough. So.
It was May of 1972, and my dad used to take me to all the games for I was about 6 or 7 years of age. But this was a cup final, and it was against Hibs. It was at Hampden, and we get put into a section of Hampden, which was very close to the Hibs fans, so close in fact that we were getting pelted with coins and bottles, and we ended up having to get moved to another part of the ground. And my mate Paul, he was there with his dad, and he says he remembers his dad saying, "Oh, there's Tommy Sheridan, there's Tommy Sheridan," and he remembers seeing me on my dad's shoulders on the gravel track getting moved to another part of the ground. That crowd that day, JP, was 106,000. It was the last time that there was a six-figure attendance at a Scottish football match, and it was absolutely remarkable. We won that game. The reason my memory is so vivid isn't just because of that, but it's because Big Billy scored a goal with his foot. He very early scored with his foot, but he scored with his foot that day. But the final itself was defined by the remarkable hat trick from one Dixie Deans, who as a kid growing up, he was one of my big heroes. Obviously, I loved Jinky, and I had the pleasure of seeing Kenny playing as well, which was all phenomenal and brilliant. But Dixie Deans in those years was just an enigma, unstoppable. He scored a hat trick that day, and after his third goal, he'd done a famous over in his Wilkies, which became something that was repeated over and over again. And the reason it also is very memorable, JP, is because some people won't remember this, and Jesus, it almost hurts you to have this memory. But days before that final, we were in the European Cup semi-final against Inter Milan, and we'd drawn nothing each in Italy, and we were playing Inter Milan in Parkhead to get into the European Cup final 1972, and it was nothing each after 90 minutes, and it went to penalties, and unfortunately Dixie hit his penalty over the bar, and he was absolutely shattered. He was really, really upset about it, as you would be, and a lot of the talk at the time and speculation was he would be dropped for the cup final. But Big Jock knew a thing or two about football, and he knew a thing or two about motivating players, and he played Dixie that day, and he went on to have an absolutely brilliant game and score a hat trick. Lou McCarry scored two, and Big Billy scored the other one. So 6-1 triumph at Hampden, 106,000 fans, and Big Billy lifted the Scottish Cup. That's my most vivid memory as a kid, 8 years of age.
It's absolutely amazing, Alan, isn't it? Like, obviously, we've only kind of heard these stories from our dads, grandpas, stuff like that, and I can see Tommy's face lighting up, just actually visualising that happening there. I know we've got memories, mate, but they're memories that have happened of more recent to what's so good about Celtic and what we represent as a club and everything else. But it's so good, Alan, having guys like Tommy on for a chat with us, because it's good to also have that reflection on how good Celtic were even back in the day without, because I think that's lost somewhere in our support somewhere. I really do. I think a lot of especially the younger generation, like say Ryan, the co-host here, he's very spoiled, and I keep kidding him on about it, and I keep saying, right, hey man, you've only seen nothing but success. So when he finds it hard for when Celtic aren't winning or drawing or dropping points and maybe no supply, he doesn't, he makes jokes about wanting to drink bleach and jump his cell, throw his cell off of Kingston Bridge and stuff like that. But to get Tommy on, Alan, it's just brilliant, mate, hearing these stories.
It's we look back and we reflect on when we were growing up, JP, and that was during the other side of the city kind of dominating, with us not having much joy with trophies or success whatsoever. So you appreciate it a bit more when you go through these stages of kind of football, because we realise how special it can be, how much we're dominating Scottish football at present. And when you go kind of beyond the 90s and before that, there was massively dominant times that Celtic had that Tommy's explaining there. So you hear about the kind of stories as well. It does kind of it, it does light you up a bit to know how dominant Celtic were in numerous decades, even out with the times that we've watched Celtic. It just shows how massive a club that Celtic are, and how kind of privileged that us as fans are, that we've experienced this kind of level of dominance and this level of success. So
Lads, even
obviously,
another memory, I'm sorry to butt in, but there's another memory which is again's dead vivid. Again, I was talking about it with my mate because we were at the game together. If I fast forward to 1980, so 8 years on, I would be either 15 or 16, and we had Real Madrid come to Parkhead for the first leg of the European Cup quarter-final. And Laurie Cunningham made his debut that night for Real Madrid. He'd been a massive, big signing from, I think it was West Brom to Real Madrid. Paul and I were we used to stand at the number 7 in the jungle at Parkhead, and we were watching him doing his warm-up before the game, and we're just in awe of what this guy was doing with the ball and how silky and how fast he looked. So we were all worried. But we went on to win that game 2-0 that night. And it's talk about defining games. There's a guy called Alan Snedden who played right back for Celtic. And he wasn't the most fancied, certainly wasn't the most silky of right backs that Celtic's had in its history. But Alan Snedden that night set up both goals against Real Madrid. And one of the goals that night was scored by the legendary Johnny Doyle. Some of you will have heard of. We grew up loving Johnny Doyle because he lived and breathed Celtic. Alan Snedden was in a cross to the back post. Johnny rose like a lark, bang, 1-0. And then Alan Snedden breaks into the box, has a fantastic shot. Keeper saves it, and it breaks to George McCluskey, who puts in the second goal. So an unfancied right back in the shape of Alan Snedden had a massive say in a game against the mighty Real Madrid. 2-0 we beat them. Now, the other side of that story, we never got to see it because nowadays they didn't have them on the telly. But we actually get beat 3-0 at the Bernabeu. Although we hit the bar, Charlie Nick hit the bar in the first half of that game, and if we'd scored that goal, it could have been a different outcome altogether. But there's an example, even in the 80s, the early 80s, 1980.
My dad always speaks very highly about that particular game as well.
Was your dad at the game?
It was 2-0 at Celtic Park, and
that's it.
He went over, and it ended up that Real Madrid.
Did he go to the game? Did he? Gee.
The Real Madrid turned us over 3-0 the corresponding leg. He says it was one of the most dangerous, harshest atmospheres he's ever experienced in any football ground. That they were put in. I think there's like 3 tiers at the Bernabeu, and they were put in the middle tier. Between kind of up above them and below them, there was Real Madrid fans, and it was a very hostile atmosphere, to say the least. So he speaks very highly about that. The 2-0 victory against Real Madrid at Celtic Park. But when you think back these kind of memories, especially for yourselves, who would you look at as any time through that period that you were watching Celtic? I know you've spoken about Dixie Deans and kind of Kenny Dalglish and Jinky. Are these the kind of players that you idolised? Is there any players that you really had a special thought or special kind of feeling towards kind of growing up watching these players?
Do you know, JP, I don't know about you guys, but I always find that a very, very difficult question when people ask you who's your favourite player, because there are so many of them are favourites. But during that period, I was blessed with seeing the likes of Jinky play, seeing Kenny Dalglish play, and my heart was broken in 1977. I remember it as if it was only yesterday. I was over in Weems Bay with my girlfriend at the time. I think I would have been 14, 15. And the Evening Times front page, £440,000. Kenny Dalglish signs for Liverpool. It was like a loss in the family. The idea that we'd lost Kenny Dalglish. So he was a remarkable player. Jinky was just a magician. But through all of that, I've got to mention Big Billy McNeil. Big Billy, talk about captain. He just led from the front. all times, complete and utter gentleman, but as hard as nails on the pitch. And then, let's not forget Danny McGrain, probably in his prime, the best right back in the world. Not the best right back in Scotland or the best right back across the UK, but the best right back in the world in his prime, Danny McGrain. He was just superb. And these guys, I think they throw away the mould sometimes with these guys, but they're people who, as a kid growing up, they stick in your memory. There's another guy who didn't have a long career at Parkhead, but he played in a position that I played in as a kid at sweeper. His name's Jackie McNamara, and he's Jackie McNamara's who played at Celtic Park. He's a bigger legend at Hibs for the amount of games he played and the amount of time and energy he gave to Hibs. But Jackie played at Celtic Park for a while, and I loved him. He was absolutely hard as nails, but he could pass. He had a great attitude. Turns out he's also a big socialist as well, so that was something that I had in common with him. So he, in terms of players that have a sort of leave a mark on you, these are the types of memories that just never leave you. They just never leave you.
Yeah. Tommy, see, growing up obviously as a kid and obviously watching Celtic and then going to games and stuff, my dad's told me stories about a good Dundee United side, Aberdeen, etc. Teams challenging in Europe, doing well against European teams. In terms of Scotland, was it as clear as a gulf as what there is now, or was it more of a level playing field back in the day? Like
absolutely, much more of a level field.
Right.
Listen,
so what do you think's changed then?
Well, I had the pleasure of a long period, a long friendship with a guy who I still miss very dearly, Frank McGarvey, who's a Celtic legend, one of the members of the Centurion Club, 106 goals for Celtic over a 5-season career with us. And Frank and I used to do a wee podcast together, and Frank would describe the great Dundee United teams, the great Aberdeen teams, but he would also talk about Hearts and Hibs in those days. Those were the decades, that 1980s. Aberdeen were winning the league. I think they won it twice at least. Dundee United won it once, if not twice. They were winning the cups regularly. Celtic, in fact, there was one game, I'm trying to remember what season it was, but we went into the last day of the season, and if we needed to win at Ibrox, if we had any chance of winning the league, but we needed Dundee United not to win. So that's how close it was, right? And we go to Ibrox.
Sorry, just if you two just continue, somebody's at my door. I'm going to have to go and actually get it a wee second, right? So give me a wee.
There's the vagaries of live podcasting.
You must have saw this. I know exactly. Just give me a wee minute. I'll be back in a second.
I'll continue with this while JP's away, because we need to win at Ibrox, and believe it or not, we're 2-0 down at half time. It's a disaster, absolute disaster. Frank tells me that Big Billy said to the dressing room at half time, because all they could hear was the Celtic fans singing "Walk On," even though we're 2-0 down. And in those days, you got nearly half the stadium, so you could hear the Celtic fans. And Big Billy turned to everybody in the dressing room and says, "Listen to that. You listen to that. If you're not going to go out and play for them, then you don't deserve to wear the jersey." They went out and won 4-2. They beat Rangers 4-2 in the last game of the season. Unfortunately, Dundee United won their game as well, so they actually won the league. But that's the type of scenario you had in Scottish football in those days. You've got to remember, Aberdeen were winning European trophies. Dundee United winning European trophies. Dundee United beating Barcelona, home and away. These were real teams. And what happened is what JP said, that what has happened, and it's an interesting conundrum. You could even go right back to grassroots. I remember, I think it was the late 70s, early 80s, there was a big teacher strike. And it led to a withdrawal of goodwill from teachers. Right. And with the withdrawal of goodwill, then a lot of teachers weren't prepared to give up their spare time any longer to take the school football teams, and a lot of the school football suffered because of that. And I know it's only you think, oh, it's only a small thing, but that was where the Scottish footballers were coming from. They were coming up via the schools football, and it's from that point of view, you've got a situation where that one single situation where an industrial action can lead to a knock-on effect, because undoubtedly we stopped producing the great players that were coming through the Aberdeens and the Dundee Uniteds and the Hibs. I mean, I mentioned there the 72 Cup final, the 6-1 game. 2 years later, 74, we had Hibs in the Dryborough Cup final, which was the equivalent to the League Cup nowadays. And it was 6-3 we won. Joe Harper for Hibs scored a hat-trick in our cup final and still ended up in the losing side. But Dixie Dean scored another hat-trick for us and we won 6-3. So in those days, it wasn't just Celtic and Rangers that were winning cups. It wasn't just Celtic and Rangers that were winning leagues. The big four, if you like, including Aberdeen and Dundee United and Hibs, were there or thereabouts. They had great teams as well.
It's probably the influx of foreign players as well, the way kind of football and society has changed as a whole. We're looking at kind of the likes of Callum McGregor and Scott Brown that we spoke about in depth, really, that these are the guys that know the club and know the way that Scottish football is, and these are the guys that would run through brick walls to kind of do anything for Celtic to win. And now, compared to that time, there was 11 players that would probably do the exact same job and have the exact same effect with the amount of passion that they were leading from. So it's just maybe a change of society.
How many times have we reflected on the 67, the Lisbon Lions? How many times do you reflect on that 30-mile rule? Who on earth, anywhere in the world, could win the Champions of Europe with a team with a 30-mile circumference of their ground? That's all that they're drawn from. Every one of the Champions League winners now are full of multi-countries, multi-nationalities. Yet Celtic did it with a team drawn from a 30-mile radius of Parkhead. I mean, it's just, it'll never be done again. It's just, it's a one-off, and it deserves to be recognised.
It's a bunch of guys taking their wallies out and putting them under Jim Craig's jersey on the stove day after a game. I mean, that's like I say, my dad, he's always told me that the greatest club team in football history he's ever seen was the Lisbon Lions. He's always said they're the greatest. And he said the 1970 Brazil World Cup team is probably the best international team he's ever seen. And he saw both of them in live play in stadiums wherever he's been watching them, So obviously
and don't forget, of course, that we were in the cup final that year as well, the European Cup final 1978. You think of these things now and you think, oh, we'll never qualify through the group stages of the Champions League, never mind get to finals. But, we win it in 67, we get to the final in 1970, we get to the semi-final in 1972. I mean, remarkable achievements for a club of our size and stature at that time. But things have moved on. Unfortunately, money's became a massive factor in the game, and the way the Premier League is run now. I mean, I do have a slight smile on my face, guys, at the fact that not one English team's in the European finals, because they all thought they were going to be the bee's knees. They were talking about, an all-English final, and we're going to be in the final of the Europa Cup and the Europa League. And they've been horsed out of all the competitions, despite the multi-million-pound budgets they've got. They've been found wanting on the park with these teams. So sometimes I take a wee bit of satisfaction in that. I just get pissed off. I've got nothing against England or English people. I hate their commentators. I think they're arrogant so-and-sos, and I sometimes like to see them get a doing.
Even look at the Champions League. The champions, there's certain countries next year. There's 5 teams qualifying for the Champions League. So it's a completely different format that's changed throughout the years. Probably, I don't want to say for the worst, because it's probably better entertainment value and better kind of money wise for some of the clubs. But it takes away the kind of the fairy tale stories that you can get, like a club with players for a 30-mile radius in Scotland can go and be kind of Europe's elite and become the kind of first winners of that competition in Britain. So it takes away that the money, the gulf and the money and the finances has just became too large for many teams to kind of make that impact, and it'll probably continue like that for a very long period of time, to be fair.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah. Tommy, do you, obviously, the change that we saw in Scottish football, so I missed, obviously I had to go, had to answer my door, so obviously, what was your answer to the fact of where have you seen the change in Scottish football? What do you, are you putting it down to finances, or are you putting it down to teams maybe just not being able to keep up that level of consistency against the Glasgow teams? Because bearing in mind, in 2012, a Glasgow team fell and had to go to the bottom division in Scottish football.
Yep.
So by all means, they might have the still fan base, the same fan base and whatever else. But they are not humble enough to tell you that they're a different team. They are a different team. They're not the same team that used to be challenging, because the other team was synonymous with winning trophies and winning titles, and it's a total night and day makeup of both sides. So in terms of the rest of Scottish football, Tommy, where do you see massive differences?
The point that you're making there is just a matter of fact. I mean, you can have all the semantics you like, but the Rangers of old died in 2012.
Yeah.
They were reincarnated as a new entity. You're right to say they retained their fan base. Many of their fans, unfortunately, are very racist and xenophobic. I've went on record in the past in saying that they're a club that was built in sectarianism, and they represent some of the worst echelons of sectarianism at the very, very top. Sure, I don't tar every fan with the same brush. Some people always try and have an equivalency, and I don't doubt that we've got some nutters that support Celtic, but there's no equivalency in terms of the numbers, because there is a very, very strong base who continually will spew out their sectarian chants and their songs of hate, and it's not just a small minority. Whereas if we've got idiots who want to pelt players at corner flags and risk getting us fines and all the rest of it, that is a small minority as far as your fan base is concerned. So what we were talking about earlier was that one of the factors of the late 70s, early 80s was there was a big school teachers strike, which led, it was a very, very emotional strike, a very long strike, which led to teachers withdrawing goodwill, and goodwill was what was required for the running of school football teams. A lot of school football teams folded during that period and thereafter. So in terms of that conveyor belt for your Dundee United, your Aberdeens, your Hibs, your Celtic, Rangers, that was one area which dried up, and we didn't have that same. People talk about academies. Well, schools football was academies in those days. You used to have your Glasgow school trials, your Scottish school trials, your East of Scotland school trials. That's where the best, that's where the crop of these players came from. If you go back through the histories of the Paul McStays and others, they all came up through schools football. So that was one factor. Money has definitely come in and added to the problems. But we certainly, around about those early 90s, we stopped, the big teams stopped competing. The Aberdeens and the Dundee Uniteds, Hibs, they stopped competing the way they used to throughout the 80s. I mean, that decade, as I said when I discussed it with Frank, he would make the point that his hardest opponents weren't Rangers in those days. His hardest opponents was David Narey and Paul Hegarty, playing against Alec McLeish and Wally Muller. I mean, that was his hardest opponents. It was Dundee United and Aberdeen were the big games. They were the deciding games for the titles. The point that you missed when you were answering the door, JP, was one of the games. I'm sorry, I can't remember the actual year of it, but it was the last game of the season. We needed to win the league. But if Dundee United win, they win the league. And it was at Ibrox, and we were 2-0 down at half time. Frank, I'm going to repeat the story because I've already said it, but it's worth repeating because it was a brilliant story. Frank tells the story that they were in the dressing room, their heads were down, and all they could hear in the dressing room was the Celtic fans outside the Ibrox singing "Walk On." And in those days, you got almost half the stadium, so that's how you could hear the Celtic fans.
Right, okay.
And I literally said to every one of them, listen to that. If you can't go out and play for them, you don't deserve to wear this jersey. And they went out and won 4-2. So they turned a 2-0 deficit into a 4-2 victory.
Wow.
And they could have won the league. Unfortunately, Dundee United won their game and they won the league. So that's how tight it was. That's how nip and tuck it was. But it wasn't between Celtic and Rangers. It was Celtic and Dundee United. And that's how difficult that decade was. And unfortunately, we've lost that competitiveness. I would love for Scottish football to become more competitive. But the truth is, and this is a difficulty, JP, that we've got in terms of attracting players, because we talk about quality, signing quality. I mean, we must sign quality, or else we're not going to make any advances in Europe next season. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But how do you attract quality to a league which unfortunately now is on a par with the Irish League? I mean, you look at some of these European games that Motherwell were playing in, Dundee United, Aberdeen, Hearts. We're getting beat with teams from Cyprus. It is unbelievable that we're getting beat with teams for the Irish League, Cyprus League, the Greek League.
Connor Ski beat
Exactly, Welsh as well. I mean, it's embarrassing is the truth of it. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, no, listen, 100%. I think you've said mostly what I've been chatting about on here mostly all season, to be honest with you. In terms of, Ryan and Alan have kind of said, we need to try and do something about bringing in guys who are maybe more experienced and that they're not as young. They've maybe been around the pond a couple of times. They've won trophies maybe somewhere else. They're maybe similar circumstances to maybe like a Scott Sinclair, who's maybe down on his luck at his team now, and he just needs that wee bit of revive to get him going again. And that wee spark. And a Celtic with a phenomenal fan base that they've got, and, that did that for Scott Sinclair. No only that, but he'd obviously worked with Brendan Rodgers, so that boded well. So I think Celtic need to try and be clever in their recruitment, whether they can try and do, something like that. But I've always said, Tommy, you can go and spend 10, 11, 12 million on a guy. He could come in, either his first game he gets injured and he's out for how long, or he could come in and not perform to the level that we want him to.
Listen, it's a lottery. JP, the transfer market is a lottery. I mean, I go back to the 2020 season. We're chasing the 10, and we're all up for it. And I've got to say to you, when I heard we'd signed the Greek number 1 as our goalie, when I heard that we'd signed from West Ham a £15 million rated Swiss international to play up front, when I heard that we had managed to tie down Elyounoussi for another year, when I heard that Shane Duffy was coming up from Brighton, Irish international, to play at centre back, I thought that was it. It was all over.
Yeah,
we're going to walk this. They are brilliant players individually and have had brilliant careers individually. But sadly, it didn't work. It just didn't gel. Unfortunately, Edouard didn't gel that year. The whole COVID effects, the isolation of COVID, unfortunately affected a lot of our young players. And categorically, people talk about the 12th man. The fans are the 12th man. And the 12th man wasn't there in the 2020 season. And that's what done for us, I think. So sometimes on paper, you can look at a player and you can look at their stats and you think, oh, this is going to be the bee's knees. They're going to be brilliant for Celtic. I mean, the Greek number 1, he's probably the the worst signing as a goalkeeper I've seen in my long time at a supporting Celtic. He's probably a very nice guy, Big Barkas. But he literally threw goals into the bloody net. He was absolutely useless for us. And he cost us that whole season, in my opinion. He totally and utterly cost us. But on paper, you're signing the Greek number 1 and you think it'll be brilliant. I think it was 6'4" or something. So you're saying to yourself, you'll be a giant in the goals.
Yeah, no, listen, and that's what I'm saying. You've outlaid £5 million just on him, and then you've outlaid another £5 million on Albion Ajeti.
Yep.
Who, in my opinion, couldn't hit a cooney arse with a barn door.
But JP, cast your mind back to his first 4 games.
Yeah, no, 100%.
He scored 5 goals in his first 4 games.
Yeah, that's it. And then all of a sudden,
the United, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then he
cast your mind back to Shane Duffy's debut and his second game. He scored in both of them. Scored the winning goal, Livingston.
But I think you're right, Tommy, in that there was more to it than what meets the eye. I think, and now we've read about it now. Obviously, Lennon spoke about it. I think he was on PLZ Soccer and he'd mentioned to the lads there, you had guys who Celtic are going for 10 in a row, but prior to Celtic going into the 10 season, I think some of these guys maybe had been promised, right, we'll get you moves, we'll get you moving on. And that was obviously in their heads. And I don't like using the term, Tommy, down tools at all. I don't like that because it makes it sound like the guy's been unprofessional, and I wouldn't like to think that about anybody in that profession. So, but something wasn't right. Now, whether they took a huff or threw the rattle out the pram, as you would call it, I don't know. But it just didn't look right at all. And I don't firmly believe the main problem, or one of the main problems, was just the fans not being there. That was a big part of it, don't get me wrong. But you have to go and produce on the pitch, whether the fans are there or not. I mean, there is games in Europe because of punishment they get played behind closed doors. I've seen teams perform really well behind closed doors. So it does happen. But for one side to do what they done, and the other side to then all of a sudden become prime Barcelona and get bummed up by this lunatic fringe, I call it, this media in Scotland. It's just bizarre. I mean, it really, really is. So I think there's more to it than just, players not just get out and performing. I think there's a lot more to it than that.
Any sort of toxic attitude starts. You can look at kind of players like maybe Christie, Ayer, Hodgson Edward, and they were the players that were referring to that were maybe looking for that move away. So if you get any kind of toxic attitude within the dressing room, that can spread very, very quickly. And I think a lot of that.
I've spoken to some people.
Some of that.
I've spoken to some people that were involved behind the scenes during that season, and you've got to try and get this onto some perspective. They couldn't even travel in buses together. They all had to get picked up separately. They all had to. Sometimes the only time they seen each other was when they were in the dressing room getting changed for the game. They weren't allowed to socialise after training or after games. And for a lot of the young, particularly the Edward and Cham, they didn't know anybody. Their lives were very, very sparse, even with all the money in the world. They had no social life. They had no camaraderie. I know for a fact that Big Shane Duffy went through a very, very tough time in his life, lost his father. He was very, very close to his father. He was his agent, had a lot of personal issues that he was dealing with as well, and was on his own. He couldn't share it with anybody because of the isolation. So there was a combination of factors, guys, that all came together. Anything that could go wrong that season went wrong that season. It was just a horrible, horrible combination of factors. You couldn't put it down to one thing, but anything that could have went wrong. And it's sad that we missed out that opportunity. But you know what? See if things go well next season, we could be on our way to another journey towards 10.
Yeah.
Because I think our dominance.
I said that last night, man. That what Cam did.
Well, we're going to win. We're going to win a third in a row tonight. There's no doubt in my mind. I think Brendan will already have earmarked hopefully 3 or 4 players, not just 2 or 3, but 3 or 4, depending on what happens with Matt. So we should have a stamp of authority and quality that means we'll win next season as well. And if we do that, that's you get 4. You're almost halfway there. Why would we think that we couldn't go on another run of nearly of getting the 10, getting the Holy Grail as we've called it in the past? So
Well, 112 out of 13.
I think it's a glorious time to be a Celtic fan, JP. And
yeah,
you've made the point earlier there. You have got to bear in mind, guys like me lived through the 90s, and it was a horrible decade, an absolutely horrible decade. But I was able to delve into my memories, and that kept me going. Some of the younger Celtic fans, unfortunately, all they've ever known all their lives is winning, and I think that led to an overreaction in relation to the 2020 season. An overreaction. We were all sad, but you don't turn on your own, and unfortunately, some of the fans turned on their own.
Mm-hmm. Tommy, what's your thoughts on Celtic's transfer model and the way they do it? Because I've said vastly on here all season that I think it's remarkable the way they do things. To have a kitty of money, finances sitting in the bank that they've got just now, potentially looking at what we're going to be getting now with this new format of the Champions League as well, going on top of all that, is nothing but a miracle considering the league we play in. You mentioned it earlier, Tommy, about the league we play in. You know, why would quality players want to come and play at the Tony Macaroni Stadium? Why would quality players want to go up and play at Dingwall on a wet Tuesday night? So to have the finances that Celtic have got in this day and age to compete going into the Champions League, going into the Europa League, whatever it may be, and have a chance at getting in some players who can help get you results in these. I mean, we're not even looking at, for me now, it's all about building on the Feyenoord result, winning against Feyenoord and stopping that rot of losing so many games in a row in the Champions League. And we've done that this season. And bearing in mind, this season now I've heard the Celtic are rotten and they're rubbish and they've done this and they've done that. And they're within this here touching distance of winning another double. So if that's a bad season...
Yeah, but there's no doubt, JP, but we've all been in the stands or we've all watched it on the telly, and what you would have to say about Celtic this season is we've been inconsistent. We lacked the fluency that we had last season. We would start each game last season and we knew we were going to win because we just blew teams away. This season, some of our wins have been scrappy. We've relied on last-minute goals on several occasions, and that has been a lack of consistency. Now, there has been very, very difficult key injuries at key times in the season. We went in December there when you've got the likes of CV missing, Hatate missing, latterly McGregor missing, but in December we lost 2 games in a row. I mean, that was unheard of, to lose 2 league games in a row, including one at home. I mean, that was utterly a shock to the system. So to get where we are now, as you have said, we are literally 3 games away from a league and cup double. I mean, so despite the inconsistency, despite the injury catalogue, we have got the chance, and I hope we grab it, of a league and cup double. However, what we have to say loud and clear here, JP, I've got to take my hat off to Brendan Rodgers. I was one of those who said when he was reappointed that he was the right appointment at the right time. Some of my pals were like, we shouldn't have taken him back. And I said, well, what do we need right now? We need a bit of consistency and continuity. We don't need to have the whole situation upset by bringing in a new guy, because Ange's leaving was a lot of turmoil. A lot of his players were there. You had to say to yourself, well, they're his players. Are they going to play for another manager? You needed somebody that knew the league. You needed somebody that knew the club. And for me, Brendan was the perfect appointment. But Brendan was working with somebody else's squad. I've got no doubt in my mind that all of those signings, your Yangs, your Holmes, your Bernados, they were all signings that had been okayed by Ange, not by Brendan. So it's very significant if you think about it, JP. Look at the starting lineup against the Rangers last Saturday. Not one new signing. It was the last season's squad that played, and it was a weakened squad because there was no Jota, there was no Starfelt available, there was no Aaron Moy available, there was no Guacamakis available. But Brendan has got a tune out of some players who were getting forgotten. I think that Jamesy obviously been one of them. And from my point of view, he deserves complete and utter applause for what he's done. His big challenge is going to be next season, because the likes of Kuhn, for instance, Kuhn is his signing. He can't turn away from that. And I think the jury's still out on Kuhn. I see in glimpses that there's a player there, but I need to see a lot more before we justify the millions of pounds that we've spent. But what I want Brendan to be given is backing by the board, that he will be given the backing to bring in ready-made players. No more projects. We've had enough projects. You talk about the Celtic signing policy, and that signing policy has been a project-led policy where you buy somebody cheap who's earmarked for a big future, and some of them work, whether it's Wanyama or Virgil van Dijk or Jeremy Frimpong. And by the way, Neil Lennon deserves a lot of credit for them. But you've got a situation where we can't. Yang's, no, in my opinion, I like the boy. He tries his hardest, but he's lightweight. The boy Home, same thing. Bernardo, I don't know. Again, jury's still out for me. But the projects, I just don't think we can afford to recruit more projects. We need to recruit quality so that we go into this Champions League section of 8 games, and you say to yourself, you've got 4 home games. We don't know who we're going to be playing, but we'll get 4 home games. Let's go and try and win the 4 home games. We could then, if you win the 4 home games, you're probably going to qualify for the next round, or at least get into the playoffs. That's a massive objection.
I think it's just been reiterated yesterday. Brendan said once again that he needs the quality next year. He's looking to bring in quality. He said that a number of times throughout the season, and we don't blame Brendan for a second, because, as you both said, I think he's done a remarkable job considering the players that he's been given. But the fact of the matter is that, as I've said, over the last 4 or 5 transfer windows, there's one player that's gone into that side, and for that's shown that the transfer model has went back slightly. We need it, and I think we've remedied that, because you look over the last couple of months, you see our head of recruitment that's either resigned or been forced to leave, and Mark Law. I think there's another member of that recruitment side that's been leaving. So obviously Celtic as a whole, whether that be the manager or the hierarchy, are seeing that the scouting or the transfer model is regressing. Because we're not having as many players that we had previously coming in and making an impact within the first 11 of the squad. So hopefully with the guys that have been moved out the door, Brendan, there'll be other people coming in to fill their roles, and we can get back to the model that's been so good for the club and so good for the finances. It's put us on a level that's out with anybody's reach financially in Scottish football, and we should be building for that position of strength. We've taken advantage of having Brendan Rodgers as an elite manager this year, because he's managed to get through that with the inconsistency and maybe no playing up to the highest level that we are capable of. But we're still winning these trophies. So I think this is the point at the summer, that we don't bring in the projects. We spend that wee bit extra money on a few kind of the best that we can afford, the best that we can attract. The fact of the matter is, it's going to be hard. We need to be clever about it. We need to use different avenues to kind of attract these types of players. But obviously, with that financial muscle that we've got now, that can only be beneficial towards trying to attract these players. Because
GP, I remember reading, you guys might have read it already yourself. I think it was Deloitte Touche. It was one of the accountancy firms. I think it was last season or 2 seasons ago, probably 2 seasons ago, they did a massive survey of British football. And it was to try and make a comparison of the wage levels and the attraction of the various leagues. And a lot of fans tend to think, oh, well, we can't match the Premier League, right? We know that, right? But we're on a par with the Championship in England. And you know, that's nonsense. We're actually on a par with League One in England. Our wages, our average wages in Scotland are below League One in England. So see, when you're talking about attracting guys to come and play in our league, you're talking about how attractive is going playing in League One in England. No Championship, but League One. And that's the level and structure that we're competing with, because they've got so much more money available there that a lot of the players coming up via the grassroots in England, they're getting better wages to stay there than to come up and try their hand in Scotland. Now, here's the difference. Are you in football because you want to make as much money as possible, or are you in football because you want to win things? And there are some differences, isn't there? And this is a bit of a conundrum that I'd throw it to you guys, and I'd throw it to your listeners. And that is Matt Riley. Because Matt Riley seems like a deep thinker. He seems like a very intelligent young man. He's only 23 years of age. He had a bigger contract on the table before he came to Celtic. He was offered bigger wages to go and sign for another club in England. But he decided to come to Celtic. So he obviously thought, he was convinced that his personal development would be enabled by coming here to Celtic. Yeah. He's now got a situation where everybody's saying he's gone, he's off. And you know what? They're probably right. But what if Brendan sits him down and says, listen, Matt, we're in the Champions League. You're going to a club probably that's not going to be in the Champions League. So you're not going to be competing at the elite European level. You're going to go to a good club if you go somewhere else, but probably not a Champions League competing club.
Yeah.
I want you to stay with us another season, and I'm going to bring in X, Y, and Z. And he tells them the types of players that he's trying to bring in, and these are good quality players. And he wants Matt to be part of that team, a real good quality Celtic team. Do you know what? I would like to think, I've got no inside information on it, and I'm probably talking mince. It won't be the first time, probably won't be the last.
But it's all right, mate. You're welcome on here anytime, man.
I would like to think that Matt Riley would turn around and say, I want to be part of that, because his ambitions aren't just about ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. He's making a packet. He's got a new contract at Celtic. He's obviously making a lot of money, but has he got the ambition that he wants to go and play in Europeans elite competition and continue to be adored by our 60,000 fans every second Saturday? So there's something that I throw out there. I don't think that we throw in the towel when keeping Matt Riley. I think we try and keep him, but we keep him by telling him that there's going to be better quality brought in.
Yeah, I think so. I took great confidence yesterday watching Brendan's presser. Like you highlighted, Tommy, when he mentions about quality and stuff, and then you seen him, his head moving, the back of his head was moving a wee bit, and you could see him visualising what he knows is already happening behind the scenes. You seen it flooding to him, sitting there. If you watch him closely, you can see, and he gives a wee kind of cheeky smile as if, I know what's coming, I know what's going to happen. So I take confidence for that myself, and that, like you've just said, that very thing there. So he's probably maybe, I don't know, spoke to Kyogo, spoke to Matt Riley, spoke to boys and went, listen, I'm bringing, like he says, X, Y, and Z. And I want to put them round about you. I want to put them in beside you. I want to put them round about you. Maybe spoke to Callum McGregor. He's probably said to Callum, this is what my plans are, and I want you lads to head up the changing room with us and bring them in and tell them what it's all about and get them in involved with us, get them knuckled down and set about us mob across the water. And I wouldn't be against that thought process at all, because I really do think, and I'm going to say this here live in front of everyone that's probably watching us, that if Brendan is not given the backing this time that he so desired in the summer, and he asked again 4 or 5 times for leading to the January window and in the January window. If he's not helped this time, and the board, it falls in deaf ears by whoever is in the board and making these decisions, we're going to lose him as a manager again.
Definitely.
We will lose him as a manager again. And then what I will say to a lot of the Celtic fans who are still within this mindset that he shouldn't be there, be very, very careful what you wish for.
Definitely.
Because remember, Ronnie Delia was lambasted by the Celtic fans for winning.
Mm-hmm.
So if you thought he was bad, how bad do you think it could get if you go to someone who's lesser of a manager than Brendan Rodgers? And Tommy, I'll put this one to you before obviously we move on to tonight's game. If Brendan Rodgers wasn't an elite manager, if Brendan Rodgers wasn't the Celtic manager and we had a lesser type manager in quality, do you think Celtic would be in the position they are just now in terms of going and trying to win a league and win a cup double?
No chance. I think Brendan has used all his vast experience, his coaching abilities, his skills, his talents, his motivational abilities to get the best out of a squad that was underperforming, that was hit by serious injuries, and he has managed to build a siege mentality and get them to realise that they have to hold it together during the worst of times. I mean, that period in December, 2 league defeats on the trot, you throw away a potential 7-8 point advantage. To be then, I mean, let's take it. I remember seeing the league number, played 30. At played 30, Rangers were 2 points ahead of Celtic. Played 30, Rangers 2 points ahead of Celtic. Played 35, Celtic are 3 points ahead of Rangers. So those 5 games between 30 and 35, obviously Rangers have imploded in relation to the Ross County and the Dundee results. But let's remember, even when it was 2 points ahead, Celtic had in the back of their mind, we've got 2 games against the Rangers. We went to Ibrox, JP, and I know we've all talked about the game last Saturday at Parkhead. Wonderful victory. But for me, the key game was the Ibrox game. If somebody had offered me a draw that morning, I'd have snapped out their horn. Now, the way the game ended up, I was really, really disappointed because we gave away a 2-0 advantage. But that was a masterclass from Brendan, absolute masterclass. To go to Ibrox twice and come away with 4 points out of the 6, it's just fantastic. We went the first time, remember, I think our defensive pairing was Liam Scales and Stephen Walsh. I mean, come on.
No, it was Lager Bielka.
He's a squad. And it was a Lager Bielka, that's right.
It was Lager Bielka.
Absolutely right. Because we were, in many respects, we were bailed out with the rules of the game. Because that rule, I've got my referee's badge, so I know the rule is there, and that is if an opponent puts their leg in front of yours to stop your flow, your leg to get the ball, then it's a foul to you, and we benefited from that because that's what chopped off their goal. But we rode our luck a bit in that game, and we won despite the major challenges. But Brendan has shown. I had the pleasure of playing in a game, centenary game for the St Rock's juniors, and it was a game against a Celtic select. I played with the Celtic select, a Celtic State of Mind podcast were involved with the Rocks committee, and they offered me opportunity to play in the game against a Rock select, and it was an absolutely packed day, Sunday, and Brendan, nobody knew beforehand, but we get told on the QT on the morning of the game, listen, Brendan's going to come. Brendan's going to come. So we were all dead excited. And then at half time, sure enough, who comes walking in? But Brendan Rodgers, right? Absolutely brilliant. And he came over and he was in our dugout. He's in the Celtic select dugout. So was John Clark, by the way, Lisbon Lion. What a pleasure, what a gentleman. And Brendan stayed for the whole second half. Game finishes. Every single fan, there was about 500-600 minimum, maybe 1,000 there. They all come onto the park. They all want pictures with Brendan. He was on the pitch for well over an hour. Comes into the dressing room in the social club. Spends time with all of the players, mixes with everybody. Doesn't leave for about another 2-3 hours. That to me summed up that Brendan is a Celtic man. You know, some Celtic fans, he's not a Celtic man and all this. But he's a Celtic man through and through, and he's a gentleman through and through as well. So from my point of view, I've got loads of time for him. I think he's an elite manager, and I think he has already got his plans. Hopefully, he won't go through a John McGinn. Hopefully, he won't go through a Timothy Castagna. We had a situation last time he was here where he wanted what he considered quality players, and he got neither of them. Well, I hope he's not going to be blocked this time by the board.
Yeah, he wanted that other big fella as well. He was over in Spain. Remember the big fullback? What was his name? He played with Valencia.
Can't remember his name, but I can remember Timothy Castagna was definitely somebody who wanted to come and play.
James Justin was another one, wasn't it?
We needed to replace Lustig, who was a fantastic servant of the club, but he played for at least one season too many. And it cost us the AEK Athens game, both home and away. He cost us getting qualifying for the Champions League, in my opinion. It wasn't his fault. He just physically wasn't able to do the things that he used to be able to do, and he cost us.
Yeah. Right, so obviously we've had a good wee chat about Celtic structure, the way they do things back in the day when you remember Celtic, Tommy. So obviously I'll start with you now, Alan, in terms of tonight's game, mate, against Kilmarnock. Celtic win or get a point, and they are champions, mate. What's your thoughts on tonight's game?
We've got all the momentum after the weekend. I fully expect that we'll get a victory tonight. But there's no taking away from the fact that Kilmarnock Rugby Park's been the most difficult away ground this season so far, with regards to performance and result. It's probably one of the poorest we've played the first game at Rugby Park. There was no fluency. There was very little to take away from it. So Derek McInnes has always got sides very well organised, always well up for it. And I still expect a difficult game tonight, but I think with the momentum and the hunger that we've got to get over the line this league title, I think I still expect Celtic for a relatively comfortable win. But any win would be massively appreciated by half of Glasgow at least anyway. So I'm really looking forward to tonight, and I just hope we can bring the level of performance we've been seeing over the last few weeks into tonight. And if we do that, I can't see any issues with picking up the 3 points and picking up our third league title in a row.
Right. I'm slightly different to Alan there, obviously. I know it's been a tough game before the night. Like Alan says, we've got all the momentum, Tommy. I think it's just written in the stars. We've won the league 4 times at their park previous to tonight. So I really do think it's written in the stars for us to go and do a 5. And I just, like I says, if the Celtic team that's fully fit and ready to go, in my opinion, if they turn up, there is only going to be one outcome with tonight's match, I'm afraid. Kilmarnock, even on their best day, isn't able to match that midfield trio and Matt O'Reilly, Callum McGregor and Rio Atati.
Listen, I agree with both of you. I think Alan's made a lot of really good points in terms of momentum. What are we playing for compared to what Kilmarnock's playing for? They've already achieved what they're going to achieve. They're not going to achieve any more from a victory. It's not going to mean they're not going to try, or obviously they're professionals and they will be trying, but I wouldn't be surprised if they'd all had one eye on Mallorca or Benidorm or wherever it is they've booked their holidays to. We've got the league title to tie up. We've got a Scottish Cup game, Scottish Cup final to consider. If we play to anything like the level we played against Hearts, I thought that was one of our best performances of the season. I thought we clicked. Our fluency was back. Our one-touch football was back. The amount of chances we created against Hearts was incredible. I definitely think I hate being arrogant because there's no room for arrogance in football because you always need to earn the right to win. I've played football all my life, played at semi-professional level, and it doesn't matter what a team you're playing against. See, if you don't go out and play your own game, the other team, all they need to be is organised. They don't need to be really good. They're organised. So you need to go out and you need to earn the right to win the games. So if you win your personal battles, it's always, we played football at a junior level, we always talked about winning your own personal battle. So who are you against, and you need to win that battle. And that's what the Celtic players have got to do. They need to go to win the battles in the midfield, win the battles at the back, win the battles up front. And if they do that, and they're up for it, they've got the ability to do it, then I think we're going to win the night. And I'd love to do that because I'm looking forward to Saturday being a really relaxing day where we can go out and hopefully finish with some style, but have no pressure on us of having to win a point or win 3 points. So from my point of view, I'd love to see us doing it tonight, and I think we will.
Yeah, just on that, Alan, give us a wee team prediction for tonight, mate.
I think it'll be basically full strength again. The only issues we're seeing is maybe Alistair Johnston. Will he make it? I could possibly see him putting Anthony Ralston in there. I don't think Anthony Ralston brings the level of quality down much. So if Alistair Johnston's going to be a risk, I could possibly see that will be the only change. But I think it's pretty clear we're strongest 11 at present. And we've shown that over the last few games now. It's been consistently that same 11 now. So if it's fully fit, that'll be the exact same as the starting lineup in the last game, in the last few games for me. So the only the one question is whether we're right backs fully fit or not, and we'll find that later on.
Yeah, Tommy, what about yourself, mate?
I agree, Alan. I think Alan's right. Obviously, Jamesy isn't used to playing 2 games in a week. 33 years of age. He had his own fitness battles earlier in the season, and that probably hampered his ability to be available for selection for Brendan. But since he's came back in this last 6-7 games, I think he's been a star. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the whole of Scottish football, never mind at Parkhead. I think he's been a fantastic servant for us. I think he's now close to all sorts of club records in terms of trophies being won. If we did win the league and the cup, which I'm confident we can, I think he's only one behind Bobby Lennox, who's I think won more trophies than anybody. So from my point of view, I would start with James. I would start with Maeda, and I wouldn't risk Alistair because I think that was a horrible challenge that he had on Saturday. How he came out for the second half, I don't know. I mean, Jesus, it looked to me as if he hadn't got off the ground when he did, his ankle would have been broken. There's no doubt in my mind about that horrible challenge. So why risk him tonight? Keep him for Saturday, and even on Saturday, maybe only give him a half because you want him fully fit for Hampden.
Yeah, I get your thoughts in terms of Alistair Johnston. Listening to his presser yesterday, he said he's okay. He said he was a bit sore on Saturday, but he seems to be fine. I think he mentions as well that he was left with severe studs marks on his legs as well. So on his leg that obviously John Lundstrom hit, which obviously couldn't have been the best for Alistair, I tell you. That looked sore even in live play.
Yes,
I was still annoyed that it needed to go to VAR for Willie Collum to do the right thing. It was, and if that happened in the street, mate, you're getting 6 months in Berlin for that.
If I'm
honest, JP, I think it would be easy to say that I agreed with you, right? But I'm going to be absolutely honest and say that live, I knew it was a bad tackle, and Colin did what a lot of referees do to try and diffuse situations like that, and that is he got his card out early, and everybody saw that it was a yellow card. And the truth is, at the time, I thought, oh, that could have been red, but it's going to be yellow. It was only when you seen it again, and see when you seen it again, and it gets sent to the screen. I mean, there was absolutely no doubt in your mind that it was going to be a red.
Yeah.
But I think seeing it again helped me, JP. Maybe because I'm a bit older than you, mate. You seen it first time around because you're a wee bit sharper than me. But when you get to 60, your sharpness falls a wee bit.
So I've got all that to look forward to. Is that what you're saying?
By the way, what about the Diamante challenge on Hatate?
Yeah, I know.
I didn't need VAR to tell me that was a booking. And now that I've seen it, I think that was a red card.
Your man here thinks he's just trying to cuddle him.
No, I says it was a booting. You were saying it was a deliberate forearm smash. I was kind of a wee bit.
Alan, I've got to say to you, mate, I thought it was a booking at first right away, and I'm absolutely appalled that he didn't get booked. But do you know what? See, if he had been booked, I think he'd have been sent off, because I think VAR would have forced them to have a look at it. And I think the intent was there. As a referee, you're always taught to look at intent.
Close fish as well.
Recklessness is a fault. But if it's reckless and with intent, then that becomes a red card. And that, there's no doubt in my mind, he that elbow went right into his neck, and it was with venom.
Was shocked as well, David, just watching it. There was a few fouls before as well that Diamante had already committed. So it was persistent fouling as well, and he still didn't get booked. You're like,
not just that as well, the one with John Suter right away on Kyogo's face, where he kind of banged his face and held him on the floor.
I'll tell you what, again, greatest of honesty, at the time I thought, there's nothing in that. And then when I seen the replay, I thought, wait a minute, by the way, that's a full horn in the face. Yeah. I thought it was just like a slight brush, but actually it was a horn right in the face. So no, I thought they got away with murder at the start of that game, and they set out to, Tom Lawrence's tackle on Callum, where apparently I don't know whether it's lip readers or no, say the union hard man.
Just laughed at
they set out right away to kick us off the park. There's no doubt about it, but it didn't work. So that's just the way it goes.
Oh, they made it. If they'd done that, they kind of made a rear end of that as well, because they never really materialised into that at all, did it? Because we just kind of played around about them and forced the tempo to what we wanted. So, no, listen, lads. Alan, I think you'll second this for me, mate. It's been good getting Tommy on for a wee chat with. He's obviously getting his thoughts, hearing the stories that he's had to tell us about as my dad would say, the good old days. I don't want to say the olden days. I don't want to be disrespectful and say the olden days there. Just because I'm slightly younger, you've got to have a wee bit of respect for older folk.
We'll get to that stage, JP.
The mere experience, but that's the mere experience days of football. No, this, like Tommy says, the young ones nowadays, they're all kind of spoiled. They're spoiled rotten with success.
Your PlayStation, your rapper music, that.
Well, that's that's definitely that's part of it, Alan. Definitely, mate. But no, as I said, I think you'll second me and thank Tommy Daly for taking
I really appreciate it, Tommy.
Come on, have a chat with us.
A pleasure, guys. Alan, I have to apologise. I kept butting in you, mate, so I apologise, brother. But one of the problems you've got with somebody that's into politics is you can't get them to shut up, even though you want them to. So,
don't worry at all.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You're the special guest, mate. We really appreciate you coming on, and thanks for your time.
The idea is for you to do the majority of talking, Tommy. So that's totally fine, mate. And by the way, you should watch this on a day-to-day basis, because I butt in and him and all, so don't worry about it. You're
brilliant, boys. Listen, hail, and thanks for the invitation, guys.
Not a problem, Tommy. Hail, and again, everybody that's tuned in with us as well, I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. Hail. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll see you again later.
Hail.
Bye.